Can I safely withdraw more than 4%? 4% rule is a rule that's been used for decades. Folks, welcome to our unique financial channel. There's really nothing else like it on YouTube because we create spreadsheets and set up numbers to show you important financial concepts like these that are showing. In this video, we want to look at the importance of the 4% withdrawal rule, but also the importance of your asset allocation and your sequence of returns risk. Because once you reach retirement, you won't have income coming in, most likely when you finally do retire. So we're going to go ahead and run some numbers to show you the relevance of this 4% withdrawal rule. Can you really withdraw more than 4%? That's the rule that's been used for decades. Let's say, for example, you've got 1.2 million saved up and you want to withdraw the 4%, which 4% of that, it's the reason we're using the numbers we're using just to make it easy. That would be 4%. That'd be 4,000 a month on this 1.2 million. We're going to give a 3% COLA going down through here to try to keep up with inflation. So we're going to go and update this and show you the numbers and how much money you're going to have left after 10, 20, and 30 years for each of the last 100 years. If returns going forward like what they've done for the last 100 years, we're going to see kind of a range of what you might have. Obviously, none of these returns are going to be identical to what we've had in the past, but they can give us a range. So let's go ahead and update this. Again, it's going to recalculate it for every single year. Now we're going to make some adjustments here. We're going to see if the 4% rule has really been solid for decades, and they were especially using the returns for the last 100 years. We see that only 2% of the time, this is the what you'd have left after 20 years, only 2% of the time would you have any kind of problem. In 1929, these are the numbers because you had 4 down years, you're out of money in 13 years. 1930, you're out of money in 15 years. That's why these two are highlighted in red. You're out of money in those 2 years after 20 years, and you add one more, 1928, you'd be out of money after 30 years. You can see the summary box for 1928. Each of these numbers gives you the summary box. You had returns like 1925 going forward, no problem. Even though you had these 4 down years and a bunch of other ones, you had some really good years before you got hit with those. They call that the sequence of returns risk. When you have the initial down years that are down years, it can really be a problem. It all depends on when the returns turn negative on you when you first retire, because ultimately they will. But let's go and do a 60-40 asset allocation, which means 60% stay in the S&P 500, but you want to have some over in a cash reserve account. In this case, we're doing 40% of this amount. So right here, and we're going to have that be used whenever the market's going down. These sums that you're taking for your living expenses, you don't want to take that out of the S&P 500 when it's already going down. You don't want to sell in a down market. So you want to have some money over here. So when the market's going down, you can take the money out of here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run it for a 60-40. We're going to update this, and you're going to see the wisdom of using the 4% rule. Right now, we're in really good shape with only 2% failure rate, 1929, 1930. But watch what happens. We just change that little thing, 60-40 split. All of a sudden, you have 0% chance using the numbers for the last 100 years of running out of money in 20 years. And you only have a few times, 1929 and 1930, where you were running out of money between 20 and 30 years. Well, let's look at somebody that needs more than the 4% rule. Let's say you need 5%. You reach retirement, you have this kind of money saved up, and you need expenses apart from Social Security, any other income. You need $5,000 a month from your nest egg, which would be $60,000. You want to give yourself a 3% COLA. But you want to see, okay, how many times am I going to have a problem withdrawing $5,000 a month? We're going to go ahead and leave it the 60-40 split because that really helped out with the 4%. See what happens with the withdrawing 5%. Now we got 6% of the time you're running out of money after 20 years. You can see it right here. After 30 years, you're running out of money 14% of the time. So it's kind of getting up there. Still got an 85% success rate, 93% success rate after 20 years. But people might be a little bit nervous with that. So some people say, well, go down to a 2% COLA then. Let's see if a 2% COLA makes much difference. Again, these were really down years we're looking at here. 1929, 1930 along in there. Would go into a 2% COLA help? Let's check out the numbers and see. Yeah, it went from a 6% failure rate to just a 4%, but you still got some problem areas during the Depression years and also right here around the year 2000. Again, those of you who watch this channel know that this was also a bad decade right here. So we're going to go ahead and run some other numbers here for you. One thing that we might consider doing, staying at the 3% COLA, because you want to give yourself a COLA to keep up with inflation. What would happen if we did what's called take a negative COLA after a bad year? In other words, you don't know during the year what the market's going to do, but say after these down years, you actually, instead of giving yourself a 2%, 3% COLA, you actually take a negative COLA. In other words, you're going down here, here's the COLA's going down through here, but because you had a negative year right here, the next year you take a negative 2% COLA. So instead of going up by 3%, you're going down by 3%. See if that would help much. Again, we're trying to see what you can do with this 5% rule right here, withdrawal rate. Can you take out 5% safely? Looks like if we just do the 2% rule, look at that, folks. After 20 years, that would solve it. That would solve it. You could take out 5%. Again, these numbers, doesn't matter what this is. It just matters what this is and the fact that it's 5% of that. Let's go up here one more thing. Let's do one. Let's go to 55. And say you need $66,000 a year. You take the negative COLA after a down year. You do a 60-40 asset allocation. And see, we can do all kinds of different numbers here. How would that affect it if we tried to go to 5.5%? We're getting quite a ways away from the 4% rule, but we saw it worked with the 5% rule with a negative COLA. What happens if we, folks, look at this. You could take out 5.5%. Let's do one more. In a previous video, which I'm going to look at, we looked at the 6% withdrawal rate. Let's go ahead and doing these same kind of changes here. Let's see how many times trying to take out $6,000 a year, which would be $72,000 on this 1.2 million. Now you get a 7% failure rate. What else could we possibly do different? We could take a negative 3% COLA and see how that might work out. Or we could do one other thing. What I've got highlighted here, when you first retire, they call those the go-go years. The first 10 years, you tend to spend more. How about in the second 10 years, you take 10% less? Just showing you. And in the third decade, so this is the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. Let's go ahead and knock that down because you tend to spend less. The older you get, you do less traveling or whatever. Let's see if this affects this 7% at all. Having these numbers kicked down by 10%. You can see it's going up by 3% here with negative 2% COLA at 64.16, but in the 11th year, you knock it down by 10%. Let's see how much that changes this. We're just trying to see, is it possible to take out 6% if you make a few different changes? Doing your asset allocation, doing negative COLAs after negative years. It knocked it from a 7% failure rate down to a 5% failure rate. So you'd have a 95% success rate just making these little tiny changes, which would really help out if you really thought you needed $6,000 a month and you didn't want to keep working, you had this much saved up and you did 60-40. Let's do a 70-30, meaning a little bit less or a little bit more staying in the S&P 500 so you can benefit from these. Let's see if that helps this 5% at all. 5% is a very good success rate, by the way. That means 95% of the time you're successful. Let's see if it cuts it down at all. 5% down to, nope, it stayed at 5%. So it looks like your asset allocation isn't helping you much because we did have these down years right here. But folks, again, look at the 20-year graph. In most cases, this is 2 million, 4 million, 6. In most cases, 95% of the time you're in great shape. It's just during the Depression and as recently year 2000 that you might have to do a little bit more adjusting if you had a returns like year 2000. Let's go to 2000. A lot of people don't want me to use Depression type years, so I like to look at more recently. Okay, if we did these kind of numbers and had returns like 2000, again, you start out with 3 down years, you'd be out of money in 18 years with 6,000, even using 70-30. Let's do the 60-40 or say 60-40 didn't change anything. This is a summary box right here. You can see the reds kicking in. You're out of money in 18 years, regardless of whether you do. Actually, you're out of money in a little bit in 17 years with a 60-40 split. How about 50-50? Back up to 18. So you can see the asset allocation isn't helping much if you start out with 3 down years. That's so crucial. So you might have to go to like a 2% COLA or 1% COLA. It looks like a 1% COLA, your money's lasting with a 60-40 split. How about this one is still a little bit questionable. So again, you need to really monitor what's going on when you first retire. If you start out with negative years, they call that sequence of returns risk, then you really might have to change your COLA. You might have to change from 6,000 down to 5,500, maybe even down to, let's see what we can make this finally last, 5,300 there. 5,300, you got 81,000 left after 25 years. You retire at age 62, you'd be having that much money left at age 87 if you went to 5,300. And again, if you went to 5,000, which we're back down to 5% rule, then you have plenty of money left after these time periods. Again, that's really rare to have this happen, but if you happen to have 3 down years, you might have to cut back either on how much you're taking out a month, cut back on your COLA, or maybe even take a higher negative COLA down the road. But that's what we know this channel. We run all kinds of different numbers. Somebody just asked me to run the numbers with the 2% COLA and the 6% withdrawal rate. So we did that, and we saw in most cases you're going to be just fine, even with the 5% rule. If you just make some minor adjustments when you first retire, maybe go to negative COLAs after down years, and especially if you start out with 3 down years, 2 or 3 down years, you might have to take a little bit less. Instead of 6,000, go to 5,000. You just have to monitor it accordingly. But folks, that's what we do on this channel. We just love doing it. We love pointing out all these different variables that you need to take into account when you're planning your withdrawal stages. Please consider subscribing and sharing this channel with others. And please like the videos and just let people know about this channel. Thanks for watching.